Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? It's your boy, The Doc, and in today's video, we are doing a special deep dive into the Rashee Rice situation. More specifically, is he healthy? Will he get suspended? And is he the Chiefs wide receiver 1 in 2025? Let's jump into it. The first question that I think most people have when we're talking about Rashee Rice is he going to be healthy this season after missing most of last year with an injury? And to answer that question, we first have to talk about what exactly that injury was. When you look up Rashee Rice injury on the internet, you'll find a variety of answers to what actually happened because of just how long it took us to get concrete answers on that subject. When he first went down in the team's Week 4 matchup last year, it looked to many, myself included, like he may have potentially suffered an ACL tear, but no official diagnosis came out for over a week, which led many sites to aggregate medical suspicion as fact. And so that is where we can get very different results when it comes to looking up an injury like this. A lot of sites were starting to take the suspicion and the guesses of medical professionals as to what this injury was as fact and reporting it as such, which is why I try not to speculate much on injuries. I try to just wait until we have all the facts because we usually will get them eventually. And that's actually what happened. After about a week and a half, we got full results from his MRI. And what we found was that he didn't tear his ACL at all. He did, however, tear his LCL as well as his PLC. But you might be asking, what the hell is a PLC? Dr. Ethan, I've never heard you mention those 3 letters in a row like that. You must be making a mistake. And I'm not. I'm going to tell you about the PLC because it's not something we get to talk about a whole lot on this channel. The posterior lateral corner of the knee is comprised of the LCL along with the popliteus tendon, which is a small muscle that sits behind the knee, and the popliteofibular ligament, which is a tiny ligament on the back of the knee. All of those are major stabilizers of the knee, and when torn in conjunction, can look like an ACL tear on the field. And that is where a lot of the speculation came from. It looked like he had a positive ACL test, but in fact, he had damage to his PLC and LCL, which mimics that type of test result, which is where all these became very, very complicated. So the good news is he had surgery to correct what I suspect was a major injury to those specific stabilizers. And why this recovery timeline did keep him out for the rest of the season, it's more of a 6-month recovery as opposed to a 9 to 12-month recovery like an ACL. You can see how these things are very close in terms of recovery timeline and what it looks like on the field, and why a lot of people were speculating ACL when it actually wasn't that, which is why, again, I don't like to speculate. But the good news is this injury isn't an ACL tear, which means if you watched last week's video where I talked all about how I never draft players with ACL injuries, that doesn't apply to Rashee Rice this season. In fact, I'd expect it to hamper him significantly less than an ACL tear would, which is why I do believe he will be 100% healthy to start this year. And I don't think there's as much risk involved with drafting him as there would be with a player with an actual ACL tear. There's some reports out of OTAs that he looks as good as ever and is back up to speed already, which would trend with the timeline that we talk about with a PLC injury and an LCL repair, which is what I believe he had last season, which is good news for anyone looking to draft Rashee Rice. So let's talk about question number 2, which is if he's healthy, will he get suspended this season? This is a tougher question for me to answer, and I don't like to talk about things that I'm not an expert at. So let's just lay out the facts and I'll give you my opinion professionally. And this is a tough question to answer because many people know in March of last year, Rice was involved in a 6-vehicle car accident in which he was allegedly racing on the highway. He then left his vehicle and walked away from the accident. This led to 8 different charges being filed against Rashee Rice. And while no one died in the accident, there were injuries. And anytime a public figure like Rashee Rice is involved, there will be lawyers involved. But For Rice, that's not actually a bad thing because his lawyer is Royce West, and he is actually a state senator in Texas where this accident occurred. And so Texas state law actually allows for him, the lawyer, as a senator to perform his civic duties first, which means that from January 14th to June 2nd, nothing could happen with this court case, and the proceedings won't actually start until July. And we know how the NFL is with this type of thing. They typically will wait for the legal system to pass judgment first before they start taking any action against the players. So with no trial in sight currently, I think there's actually a better chance that Rice isn't suspended at all this year for this accident. And that's another bit of good news if you're looking to draft him. Which leads us to question number 3. Is Rice going to be the Chiefs wide receiver 1 in 2025? And I think of all the questions, this is the easiest one. Yes, if he's healthy and he's not suspended, I don't see any way that he's not the Chiefs' number 1 option in their wide receiver room. Xavier Worthy did show a lot of promise as a solid number 2 option at the end of last season, but he only topped 100 yards in one game last year, and that was the Super Bowl. And Rice did that twice in 3 games before he got hurt. I think Xavier Worthy is an excellent wide receiver, one that I think will complement Rice in a lot of ways by being able to keep defenses honest down the field. But in the short game, that belongs to Rashee Rice, and that's the role that you want to be in this Andy Reid offense. It's the role that Travis Kelce held for nearly a decade, and it's the one that I believe Rashee Rice is going to immediately step back into. If he's healthy and he's not suspended, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs, and there's potential for him to even be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. Which leads us to our final question. Should we be drafting Rashee Rice in fantasy this year? And if you haven't figured it out by now, I think that is a definite yes for me. I believe as the wide receiver 20 in underdog drafts right now, you're getting a discount based on what people thought his injury was last year, not what it ended up actually being. And I think you're getting a discount on what people are speculating will happen with his off the field issues, not what looks like is actually going to be the case. And there's no real indication that anything will happen with that yet. Rice was the wide receiver 2 through the first 3 weeks of last season and should step immediately back into the same role that he had last year. And he has even more talent around him with Xavier Worthy, now a year more experienced, and Jalen Royals coming in as another option in the wide receiver room, and hopefully a healthy Marquise Brown this year. If you start your draft and don't go with a wide receiver in the first round, I'm aggressively targeting Rashee Rice as my wide receiver 1 because I think you're going to be able to reach on him a little bit more than other people who are going to feel like there's too much risk involved with Rice this season. That's all I got for you guys this week. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Did you like this more deep dive approach to an injury? If you did, let me know in the comments, and let me know, are you drafting Rashee Rice? Did I make a compelling enough case for you? If not, let's argue about it in the comments. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. It helps us out a ton, and the fantasy season is right around the corner. If you haven't already, think about joining the Headliner Nation community. Hit that join button down below, get access to our exclusive Discord, ask me all sorts of questions. We're already giving some updates in the Discord about some injuries that are popping up in training camps, not something that you want to miss. And if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Go to tfhdraftguide.com and get your copy of the 2025 Fantasy Headliners Draft Guide today. It's getting updated all off season, and it's not something that you're going to want to miss. That's all I got for you. We will see you next time.
Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same.